The renewed pressure on Justice Ganguly to step down comes from Indira Jaising making the law intern statement before the Supreme Court committee public. Let's go across to Kolkata. Indira Jaising is joining us on center stage tonight. Ms. Jaising, Justice Ganguly asks you that the affidavit is supposed to be confidential as it was given before a Supreme Court committee. How can it come out into the open? Is this not a breach that you've committed, Ms. Jaising?
Okay, let me tell you that as the law stands, confidentiality is maintained only so long as the proceedings are going on. That's the first point. The moment the proceedings conclude, there is no more confidentiality to it. You've read judgments of the Supreme Court. You've seen that all the facts are in the domain of the judgment once the proceedings are completed. Secondly, the report was made available to Justice Ganguly as also to the intern concerned. So they all have the material which I have put into the public domain. And thirdly, lastly and not the least, I have done it with the full knowledge and consent of the intern in question. So I have breached nobody's confidentiality. If I owe a duty of confidentiality, it's only to the person concerned. And she has no problem with the affidavit being in the public domain for the reason that her silence is construed as a weakness on her part. Her silence is being taken advantage of by Justice Ganguly. Her silence is enabling him to claim a so-called presumption of innocence, and that is why it was very necessary for me. I was compelled by my conscience to put this affidavit in the public domain.
You know, several others who've spoken out in favor of Justice Ganguly say, let the law take its own course. Why is it that on a mere charge, the Supreme Court hasn't recommended any action against Justice Ganguly, the police haven't yet swung into action? Why on a mere charge is Justice Ganguly being forced to step aside?
Because he occupies the high position of a chairperson of a human rights body, because he is a former judge of the Supreme Court of India, and the higher the position you occupy, the higher the standard to which you will be held. That is why he needs to step down. He needs to step down to protect the integrity of the Supreme Court of India. He needs to step down to protect the integrity of a human rights body. He, more than anyone else, must know that women's rights are human rights. How can he continue to occupy this chair of a human rights body when he himself stands accused of having sexually harassed an intern? That's the reason. And I want to tell you, Justice Ganguly, in his own speech delivered on the sidelines of a seminar in Bombay, after having made remarks against the late Vilasrao Deshmukh, he said it's shameful that Vilasrao Deshmukh does not step down. I want to know whether Justice Ganguly will stand by standards which he sets for politicians.
Judge yourself by the same standards with which you judge others. That's Indira Jaising. I want to go across live to D.N. Govardhan, lawyer of the Supreme Court. He will be presenting a case for Justice Ganguly. You've heard a very impassioned plea from Indira Jaising, Mr. Govardhan. She says, in the past, Justice Ganguly has held politicians accountable to a much higher standard. As somebody whose job it is to protect human rights, it is simply untenable for Justice Ganguly to cling on in this brazen defiance of the public mood in the country today.
I don't agree. I absolutely don't agree, because you don't resign from a post merely because some allegations come through. There is a method. We are governed by a rule of law. We are a country which we have rules. So it's not a banana republic that anybody may make an allegation and then you decide. Not you decide, people would decide. Some people would decide that the man must go.
But
why?
Mr. Govardhan, this is not just an allegation. This has been looked at by a Supreme Court committee set up by the Chief Justice. They have prima facie found him guilty.
No. This is actually a myth. Actually, people don't know their law. It's not correct to say that the allegations have been proved and therefore he must therefore he is guilty and therefore he should go. No, it's wrong.
Let
If you look
Indira
at the
Jaising
law,
respond
if you
to
look at
it.
the rules-
A few people want him to step down. According to the law, Justice Ganguly hasn't been found guilty. Therefore, this public trial must end, argues Mr. Govardhan. Indira Jaising.
It must end. You're actually right.
Well,
It must end.
Rahul, this is the reason why I wrote the letter to the Prime Minister. If Justice Ganguly is demanding due process, he will get due process. And let me tell you, my information is, he was asked by the committee, by the way, his statement is video recorded. Would he like to put his statement in the public domain? Ask him that question. And secondly, he wants due process, he will get due process. I just feel that the standard which applies to him is very, very, very different from the standard which would apply to you or me, to any ordinary person. He is a person, he's a public figure. Can he deny that he's a public figure? He can't. And therefore he will be judged by a different standard.
The issue is not
Mr. Govardhan, respond to Indira Jaising.
Moreover,
Shouldn't he be held accountable to a
Rahul,
higher standard of
Rahul,
morality?
issue is
Rahul,
One by one, let Mr.
Rahul,
Govardhan make his
Rahul.
argument. I'm coming back to you, Indira Jaising. Mr. Govardhan, should he, as the West Bengal Human Rights Commission chief, not be held accountable to a higher standard of morality, or to a basic standard of morality, or to a standard of morality he has set for others?
Now, everybody who's holding any post must be accountable, but you must see as to accountable to what. If you look at the law, he is the chairman or the president of the Human Rights Commission. If he has committed an offence, he can be removed by due process of law. There is a law prescribed under the statute. Miss Jaising should see section 23 of the statute itself. It says under what circumstances a man can be removed. He is a chairperson. Follow the due process instead of just going public, instead of writing article, front page, saying yes, yes. We are not living in a banana republic.
Indira Jaising,
if he has done something wrong, we don't know.
Follow the due process, argues Mr. Govardhan.
It could be her hallucination, it could be her imagination.
Yes.
And nobody has indicted him.
Rahul,
It's not been proved. It has to be a proved
Rahul.
misbehavior, and that too as the State Human Rights Commission president.
Okay, one by one, Mr.
knows
Govardhan,
the
you've made your
basic law.
argument. Let Indira Jaising respond.
yeah. Rahul, he has been found prima facie guilty of sexual harassment at the workplace by a
That
peer
is wrong
group.
also. That is
Two
not correct.
incumbent, please tell him not to interrupt me. Two incumbent chief justices and one woman judge of the Supreme Court have found, after hearing Justice Ganguly, asked Govardhan to put into the public domain his video statement to the three judges. He has been given an opportunity to be heard. And Rahul, surely you know that even a public servant who's even against whom even an offence or a misconduct is alleged is suspended from public employment. Why should a different standard apply to Justice Ganguly? Is it only because he's a former judge of the Supreme Court? The whole country today is asking this question. Are there double standards? One standard for all other public servants and one standard for former judges?